It was just another scorching afternoon on the outskirts of the city, the kind where everything feels heavy and slow, especially for Mike, a single dad juggling 2 jobs and barely keeping the lights on at home. He had grease on his hands, sweat on his brow, and more worries than any one person should have to carry. His old pickup truck sat idling by the roadside while he finished up a mobile tire repair for a customer who'd bailed last minute. Every dollar counted, especially when he had a daughter waiting at home with homework and an empty fridge. That's when he saw her, stranded by the curb in a sleek, jet-black Bentley, hazard lights blinking like a silent SOS. She looked out of place on this part of town, dressed sharp, her nails immaculate, phone in hand, but clearly frustrated. Most folks wouldn't stop. Most would think, asterisk, she's rich, she'll figure it out, asterisk. But Mike wasn't most people. He hesitated for a moment. He had no time to spare, and certainly not for someone who looked like she'd never touched a lug wrench in her life. But something told him to ask if she was okay. Maybe it was the way she looked at the car, more worried than annoyed. Or maybe it was just the way Mike was built, always ready to help, no matter what. She told him her name was Lila. The Bentley wouldn't start, and her driver had vanished after dropping her off. She tried calling for help, but no one was picking up. Mike offered to take a quick look, and she agreed, unsure but clearly out of options. Within minutes, he had his tools out and hands under the hood, explaining things she didn't understand but listened to anyway. As he worked, they talked. She asked about his daughter, his work, his life. Mike didn't complain, he never did, but the quiet strain in his voice said enough. He never asked who she really was, never expected anything in return. To him, she was just someone in need. But what he didn't know was that Leela wasn't just a woman with a broken-down car. She was hiding something, a secret that could change his life in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. Because Leela wasn't just rich, she wasn't just well off. She was an undercover billionaire, watching how people treated her when they thought she had nothing. And Mike, without even knowing it, had just stepped into a moment that would rewrite everything he thought he knew about fate, kindness, and second chances. Mike tightened the last bolt under the hood and gave the engine one final check. "Try it now," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. Lila turned the key. The Bentley coughed, then hummed to life like it just needed someone to believe in it. She smiled, grateful, but quiet. Something about her didn't quite add up, Mike thought. Her clothes screamed luxury. Her car definitely wasn't from around here. But her eyes, they looked tired. Not the kind of tired you get from a busy day, but the kind that comes from carrying secrets. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer than before. Most people wouldn't have stopped. Mike just shrugged. Didn't seem right to leave someone stranded. Been there too many times myself. She looked at him for a second, studying his face like she was trying to figure him out. "You said you've got a daughter?" "Yeah, Maddie. She's 10. Smart as a whip, but she's been having a rough time lately." He didn't say more than that. Didn't mention the late rent, the overdue bills, or how he'd pawned his guitar last week just to buy her school shoes. Those weren't things he told strangers. Leela nodded slowly, like his words stayed with her. "She's lucky to have you." He chuckled, a little embarrassed. "I'm just trying to keep the wheels turning." But behind that small laugh, Leila could sense a deeper struggle, the kind of weight that doesn't show unless you're really looking, and she was looking. As Mike packed up his tools, he noticed she hadn't made a single call. No AAA, no friend, no assistant coming to pick her up. Just her and that phone with a cracked screen she kept tapping but never dialing. Most people with a Bentley had someone on speed dial. It didn't make sense. "You sure you're good now?" he asked, slinging his tool bag over his shoulder. "I'm fine," she said, hesitating. "Actually, do you mind if I ask you something kind of weird?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "Depends how weird. If someone helped you in a big way, and I mean asterisk, really asterisk, helped you, would you take it, even if it came out of nowhere?" He looked at her, confused but curious. I guess it depends on the reason. Leela nodded again. She seemed to be deciding something, but she didn't say more. And as she drove off into the setting sun, Mike stood there, still holding that greasy rag, watching the taillights disappear. Something about the whole thing didn't sit right. Not in a bad way, just strange, like he'd just been tested and hadn't even realized it. What he didn't know was that this one act of kindness had caught the eye of someone powerful, someone who wasn't done watching him yet. The next morning, Mike woke up to the sound of his daughter coughing in the next room. Maddie had been getting sick more often lately, and the local clinic bills were piling up. He poured her a bowl of cereal, trying to smile through the exhaustion, but he couldn't shake the memory of the woman in the Bentley. Something about her question still echoed in his mind. Asterisk, would you take help if it came out of nowhere? Asterisk. He tried brushing it off. Probably just small talk. Rich folks sometimes asked weird questions, but still there was something in her eyes, like she'd been through something too, like she understood what it meant to struggle. Later that day, Mike headed to his part-time shift at the garage, only to find out his hours had been cut again. Nothing personal, his boss said, avoiding eye contact. Business is slow. Mike didn't argue. He just nodded, grabbed his gloves, and left. What was the point? You can't beg the world to treat you better. Meanwhile, Layla sat in the back of a nondescript black SUV on the other side of the city, scrolling through an anonymous social media profile she used to keep tabs on stories like Mike's. She wasn't just some billionaire hiding in plain sight. She ran a quiet, underground initiative to find people who helped without expecting anything back. She'd been burned before by those who faked their kindness, so now she tested people firsthand. Her assistant, Clara, sat in the front seat, glancing back at her. "Are you sure he's the one?" "I'm not sure of anything yet," Leela said. But he didn't ask for a thing. Not even a name. Back in Mike's world, the struggle deepened. That night, after Maddie went to sleep, he stared at a disconnection notice from the power company. 2 days. He had 2 days to pay. All the lights were out. He opened a browser on his cracked phone, looking for side gigs, anything. Dog walking, odd jobs, moving furniture. Nothing that paid fast enough. Then, just before midnight, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, we met yesterday. I might have something for you, if you're open to it. Lila asterisk. His heart skipped. She hadn't seemed dangerous, but this felt odd, too sudden, too convenient. Was it a setup? Or was this the kind of help he'd always told himself didn't exist? He didn't reply right away. Instead, he walked to Maddie's room and watched her sleep, her tiny hand clutching a threadbare stuffed bear. He thought about what he was willing to risk for her. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, Leela waited for his answer, wondering if Mike would trust a stranger offering more than just car repairs, a chance at a new life. The next morning, Mike stood outside his apartment door with the phone still in his hand, staring at the message like it might disappear. He'd spent the whole night turning it over in his head. Lila, the woman with the Bentley, the one who asked him that strange question. He hadn't told anyone about her, not even Maddie. What would he say? That a stranger who might be some kind of undercover billionaire wanted to help him. With hesitation tightening in his chest, he finally replied, asterisk, what kind of help? Asterisk. The reply came quickly. Asterisk, meet me at 4 p.m. at Café Estelle. Come alone. Asterisk. Café Estelle was one of those fancy places downtown that Mike had only ever seen from the outside. Glass walls, polished wood, people who wore watches that cost more than his rent. He almost didn't go. But with the power shut-off notice looming and Maddie's cough getting worse, he knew he couldn't ignore the chance, even if it turned out to be nothing. Or worse, a scam. At 10 minutes to 4, Mike walked into the cafe in his cleanest shirt and scuffed boots, feeling like he didn't belong. He scanned the room. Lila was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees. She looked the same, elegant, calm, but there was something sharper in her gaze today, like she was ready to make a move. I didn't think you'd come, she said as he sat down. I almost didn't, he replied, honest as ever. I want to offer you something, she began, folding her hands. A job. But not a regular one. It's unique. Mike leaned back, unsure. What kind of job? It's more like a program. For people who've proven they're decent when no one's watching. She paused. You helped me without asking anything in return. That matters. He looked at her, his guard still up. So what's the catch? No catch. But there's a test. A real one. And if you pass, the support that comes next, financial, emotional, even career-wise, it could change your life. Mike didn't know what to say. This wasn't just a second chance. This sounded like a setup for something bigger, maybe even dangerous. Back home, Maddie sat on the floor drawing pictures with crayons too short to hold properly. She had no idea her dad was across town being offered a shot that could change everything, or risk everything. And outside Café Estelle, a black car idled, its windows tinted, its driver watching closely. Lila wasn't the only one interested in Mike anymore. Someone else had started paying attention, and not everyone who watched him had good intentions. Mike left the cafe with Lila's offer buzzing in his ears. His mind raced as he walked down the sidewalk, barely noticing the traffic or people around him. A test? Life-changing support. It sounded too good to be true. But Lila hadn't seemed like she was bluffing. She was calm, serious, and that car of hers, the way she carried herself, he knew she wasn't ordinary. Still, something about the way she'd said, "You're not the only one being watched," had left a chill in his bones. He didn't see the man across the street snapping a photo of him. That night, back at the apartment, Mike tried to act normal. He helped Maddie with homework, made her soup, even managed a few laughs. But inside, he felt the weight of something closing in. After she fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table with the lights dimmed, staring at his phone. No new messages from Lila, just silence. He didn't know what scared him more, that she might vanish without another word, or that this was just the beginning. The next day, the second twist hit. Mike went to his part-time job at the auto shop, only to find police cars parked outside. His boss was pale, talking to two detectives. Mike froze, unsure whether to go inside. That's when one of the officers turned to him. "Mike Carter." "Yeah," he replied, heart pounding. "We need to ask you a few questions." They led him behind the shop, away from the others. One of the detectives opened a file and pulled out a photo, grainy, zoomed in, from outside Café Estelle. "That you?" Mike nodded slowly. "This woman you were meeting, did she offer you money, a job, anything suspicious?" "What's this about?" Mike asked, voice shaking. "She's under investigation," the officer said. "We believe she's connected to several high-level fraud operations, multiple identities, offshore accounts. We've been tracking her for months." Mike's mind reeled. Was this real? Lila didn't seem like a criminal, at least not the kind they were describing. But the photo, the file, the tone of the detective's voice, it was all too real. Was he being set up? Back in her penthouse across town, Lila stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, phone in hand, staring at a message that read, "Asterisk, they've approached him. Be careful. It's not just about the program anymore, asterisk." She exhaled sharply. The walls were closing in faster than she expected. And Mike, now caught between two stories, one of hope, one of danger, realized he had no idea who to trust. Not Lila, not the cops, maybe not even himself. Mike didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, watching the shadows move across the floor, trying to piece it all together. Lila, a billionaire, a fraud. The police had said she was dangerous, but his gut told him there was more to the story. She hadn't asked him for anything shady. She'd just offered help. Still, the photo, the sudden pressure from law enforcement, it all pointed to something bigger. And now he was caught in the middle. By morning, he'd made his decision. He called Lila. "I need to see you," he said, voice low. But it has to be somewhere private. She didn't hesitate. There's a safe house. I'll text you the address. Mike made sure Maddie was safe with a neighbor before heading out. The building Lola sent him to was hidden in a quiet corner of the city, discreet, upscale, and clearly not her first time using it. She greeted him at the door, dressed plainly, no fancy clothes, no pretense. "They came to me," he said as soon as they sat down. "The cops said you're not who you claim to be." She didn't flinch. "They're right, but they don't have the full picture." Mike waited. "I used to work in finance," Layla said. "Real power behind closed doors. But I saw too many people get used, chewed up, thrown away. I walked away and built something new. A program that finds people like you. People who help without expecting anything. We test them, then we change their lives." "So why the cops?" "Because I exposed some of the same people funding those operations. Dirty money. They want to shut me down, discredit me. That's why I disappear, change names, stay low." Mike rubbed his face, the weight of it all crashing down. "So this program, it's real. It's real. And if you walk away now, I'll understand. But if you stay, I can give you and Maddie a future." He looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "I'm in." That's when the twist came. Lola's phone buzzed. She picked it up, read the screen, and her face changed. "They found the location. We have to go. Now." Suddenly, a loud knock rattled the door. Not police, someone else. Mike stood, every muscle tight. Is this still part of the test? Leela looked at him with urgency. "No, this is real." And just as the lock began to turn, the door bursting inward, Mike realized helping a stranger on the side of the road hadn't just changed his life. It had thrown him into a world he never knew existed. One where kindness came with a price, and maybe, just maybe, a bigger purpose. The door slammed open with a crash, and two masked figures rushed in. Mike instinctively stepped in front of Leela, shielding her without thinking. But before they could move any closer, a sudden blinding light filled the room. Armed agents stormed in from the back entrance, shouting commands. Within seconds, the intruders were on the ground, handcuffed and surrounded. Leela stayed calm through it all, like she knew it was coming. One of the agents gave her a nod, then turned to Mike. "You did good," he said, almost like they'd been watching him all along. As the dust settled, Layla explained everything. The two men who tried to break in worked for a group she had exposed years ago. Powerful people with deep pockets and longer grudges. This was the final move in a long game. Mike's act of kindness wasn't just noticed. It had put him in the right place at the right time to help her finish what she started. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Lola kept her promise. She enrolled Mike in the program officially, offering him job training, mentorship, even a new home. Maddie started attending a better school, her health improving with real medical care. They didn't just survive anymore. They started living. Mike still worked with his hands, but now it was different. He ran a small workshop funded through the foundation Leela created, helping others in the community get back on their feet, people who just needed someone to believe in them. And Leela, she stayed in touch, checking in quietly, always in the background. She didn't need credit. She just wanted to keep building a better way. One evening, as Mike walked Maddie home from school, she looked up at him and asked, "Why do you think that lady picked you?" He thought for a second before answering. "I don't know, kiddo. Maybe because I stopped to help without asking what was in it for me." She smiled, holding his hand tighter. "I think that's kinda like a superhero." He laughed softly. "Nah, just a dad trying to do the right thing." The truth was, everything had started with a simple moment, helping a stranger with a broken-down Bentley. But that moment had unlocked a path Mike never imagined, filled with second chances, hidden truths, and a reminder that sometimes doing the right thing without expecting anything back can change your life in the biggest way. In the end, Mike didn't need to be rich or powerful. He just needed to be real. and in a world full of masks, that turned out to be the most valuable thing of all.